Hey everyone, I'm so glad you're here. Please like and subscribe to the channel to give me more motivation to tell more interesting stories. Now let's begin. You arrive in Point Pleasant on a gray Thursday afternoon, the kind of cold that feels personal. Your windshield wipers groan across the glass like they don't want to be here either. The Ohio River rolls quietly past the edge of town, its surface like brushed steel under the cloudy sky. There's something still about this place, not peaceful, more like it's holding its breath. You're here to chase a story, not a big one. Maybe a local mystery for the back half of a podcast episode, small town legends, historical oddities. You're thinking salt of the earth folks and dusty records, but almost immediately you feel it, that weird tension in the air, the kind that makes dogs bark at nothing, the kind that makes you check your rearview mirror twice. You check in at a tiny motel with plastic ivy hanging over the desk. The clerk is friendly enough, but when you mention you're a writer, she raises an eyebrow and says, "You're not here for the Mothman stuff, are you?" You pause. "Should I be?" She shrugs. "Suit yourself. Just don't go asking too many questions after dark." That's when you realize something. She wasn't being sarcastic. You hit the diner across the street. It smells like fried eggs and burnt coffee. Everyone stops talking when you walk in, just for a second. Then conversations resume, but softer now. You slide into a booth and pull out your notepad, scribble a few lines. You ask your waitress, young maybe 20, about the statue in town, the one of the winged creature. She stiffens. "It's just for the tourists." You nod. But then she leans in and says, "My aunt saw him in '66. Said it stood in the road and didn't move when she hit the brakes." You try not to look excited. That's your first thread. Point Pleasant isn't a big town, but it feels like one of those places where the shadows stretch longer than they should. You walk down Main Street that evening, and even the Christmas lights, strung across shop windows, seem a little dimmer here. There's a mural of the Silver Bridge painted in remembrance. December 15th, 1967, 46 lives lost, collapse during rush hour. You read the plaque. It's respectful, simple. But someone scrawled something small in black ink near the bottom. He warned us. You ask around. Older residents mostly nod and change the subject. But one man, a guy selling old coins and river fossils, says if you're really curious, go to the old TNT area. That's where it started. You look it up that night. The McClintock Wildlife Management Area. Locals still call it the TNT area. Concrete bunkers, wartime leftovers, a maze of old foundations and creeping woods. The perfect place for urban legends. The perfect place for something real. Here's a solid historical fact. During World War II, the U.S. Army stored munitions in the TNT area, hence the name. The chemicals leached into the water and soil, creating strange byproducts that still register on Geiger counters. Quirky fringe tidbit. Some believe those bunkers don't just hold echoes of old war tech, but energy, spiritual or otherwise, energy that attracts things. Historians still argue whether the Mothman was mass hysteria, a misidentified owl, or something else entirely, something the government quietly monitored, then erased. You lie in your motel bed that night and stare at the ceiling. The hum of the mini fridge is too steady, too controlled. You can't hear any crickets outside, just wind. You fall asleep thinking about wings, about warnings, and about red eyes in the dark. You wake up with the sound of tires hissing on wet pavement. The sun still hasn't broken through the clouds. It might not, honestly. There's a kind of permanent overcast in Point Pleasant, like the town is allergic to direct light. You drive out toward the TNT area, partly because the fossil guy said to, and partly because your curiosity is starting to shape into something more pointed. You tell yourself it's for the story, for content, for the subscribers, but you know better. You want to see something. You want to feel it. The road narrows as you leave town. Thick trees crowd closer. The asphalt turns to gravel, then to cracked concrete. You follow a half-rotted sign that reads, Wildlife Preserve. There's no one else around, not even deer. Then it happens. You're driving around one of the old bunkers, the ones with grass growing over the curved tops, when something darts across the road in front of you. Not a deer, not a shadow, something tall. It moves on two legs. It has wings. You slam the brakes, hard. Your chest thuds against the seatbelt. You sit there breathing like you've run a mile. The road is empty, but something lingers. A strange hum, low and metallic, like a phone vibrating inside your skull. You get out, slowly. Gravel crunches under your boots. The air smells like wet leaves and rusted iron. You walk to the spot where you think it crossed. There are no tracks, just the faintest indentation in the grass wide. Not human. Then you see them. Two red lights. Not headlights, not reflections. Eyes glowing, staring at you from inside one of the concrete bunkers. You don't move. They blink and vanish. You're back in your car faster than you'd admit to anyone. You drive back toward town, white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Every mailbox looks like it's watching you now. Every shadow under the trees is shaped just wrong enough. You stop at a gas station for coffee and find your hands shaking. The guy behind the counter notices. TNT area, he says. You nod. He just says, yeah. You don't even need to explain. Back at the motel, your phone rings. The caller ID just says, unavailable. You answer anyway. There's silence. Then a burst of static. Then a voice, not quite a voice, more like a glitch in audio. Don't look at him. You hang up, then turn your phone off, then throw it into your suitcase. Here's a historical footnote to chew on while you freak out. In 1966, 5 men digging a grave in Clendenin, West Virginia, claimed they saw a large man-like figure with wings rise up from the trees. It was the first official Mothman sighting. Now for something fringe. Some theorists believe Mothman is not a harbinger of doom, but a protector, a cosmic warning light, like the canary in a coal mine. Historians still argue whether Mothman is unique to Point Pleasant or part of a global pattern of similar sightings like the owlman in Cornwall or the bat squatch in the Pacific Northwest. You try to write that night. Try to make sense of it, but your laptop glitches. Pages freeze. Then the lights flicker. Outside, the motel sign sputters. You peek through the curtains. Nothing. You go to bed with the lights on. But that doesn't help, because sometime after midnight you dream of the road again, of those red eyes, and this time they follow you home. The next morning, you feel like you didn't sleep at all, even though your clock insists you were unconscious for 7 hours. Your body doesn't buy it. Your brain doesn't either. It feels like something's been digging around inside it while you were out. You step outside hoping for clarity, maybe a little breakfast. Instead, you get a sky full of low-hanging clouds that don't seem to move, and the same quiet tension that greeted you on arrival. Only now it's personal. Your phone is still off. Good choice, you think, until the landline in your room rings. You didn't even know it was plugged in. You stare at it like it's some ancient artifact freshly awakened from a curse. You pick up. A woman's voice, barely above a whisper, says, he sees through windows, then hangs up. You don't bother making toast. You go into town instead, looking for something, maybe validation, maybe coffee. At a corner cafe, you finally meet someone willing to talk Dennis, retired mechanic. Grew up in Point Pleasant. You're not the first to hear things on the phone, he says, stirring a mug of watery coffee. In the 60s, phones would ring all over town. Static, beeping. People said it was government tests or maybe something worse. You ask if he ever saw Mothman. He hesitates, then saw something. Tall, black, wings like a tarp in the wind, eyes red like brake lights. Didn't stay long. You press further. Did it follow him? Dennis smiles like someone remembering a bad storm. It don't follow. It waits. As you leave, he offers a final warning. Don't answer calls you don't expect. That night, you try turning your phone back on, just to see. It vibrates immediately. No caller ID. You don't answer. Instead, you try to sleep. But the static won't stop. Not from the phone. From the walls. You get up, check the outlets, the TV, the vents. Nothing. Just the faintest sound, like someone whispering numbers in Morse code through the plaster. You grab your notebook and scribble down what you think you hear. The numbers make no sense until you realize it's a date. December 15th, 1967. The Silver Bridge collapse. A woman's voice once said, shortly before the bridge fell, "The lights won't hold." She said she heard it in her sleep every night for weeks. Here's your grounded historical fact. The Silver Bridge, constructed in 1928, used a then innovative I-bar chain design, strong but lacking redundancy. One I-bar failed from stress corrosion. That's all it took. Fringe tidbit. Some claim they saw the Mothman perched on the bridge the day it collapsed watching. Silent. Almost mourning. Historians still argue whether the collapse was random or cosmic consequence. Engineers blame corrosion. Others blame prophecy. You close the notebook, lock the door, and draw the curtains. You don't sleep because every now and then the landline rings. You stop counting the calls. Some come in the day, others at exactly 3:33 a.m. None of them last more than a few seconds. Sometimes there's breathing, sometimes distant radio static. Once you swore you heard your own voice whispering back. You begin walking around town just to escape the motel's walls. You pass the statue again, the Mothman cast in metal wings, spread eyes blank. Tourists take selfies, laugh nervously. But the locals avoid it, like it could see them too. You head to the library. The archives smell like old glue and disuse. You pull out newspaper clippings, read old interviews. November 1966. Two young couples in a car spotted a winged figure near the TNT area. It chased their car, lifted off vertically like a helicopter. The article calls it a large bird. The witnesses never used that word. You find a black and white photo of the Silver Bridge. Before it collapsed, cars lined up trucks crammed tight. Someone has circled a blurry shape in the upper left corner. Winged, shadowed. Below it, someone's written, "He was trying to warn us." You exit the library into a thick afternoon fog. Your breath clouds in the air, but it's not that cold. A dampness clings to your jacket like fingers. The bridge is gone now, of course, replaced years ago. But you walk to the riverbank where the foundation once stood. The water is still, silent. Then you feel it. Not the wind, not cold, but pressure like something enormous just stirred under the surface. You take a step back, and then another, and the pressure fades. The bridge didn't just collapse, it groaned first. Witnesses said it sounded like metal screaming, like it was trying to speak one last time. A historical fact, 46 people died when the Silver Bridge fell. It was the deadliest bridge disaster in U.S. history at the time. A fringe tidbit, several of the victims had reported strange dreams or nosebleeds in the days before. Historians still argue whether that's coincidence or a clue ignored. That night, back in your room, you hear tapping on the window. Soft, rhythmic, 3 taps, pause, 3 taps again. You draw the curtain. There's nothing there, but the glass is cold and fogged. And in the center, where no hand could reach from outside, is the faintest outline of a palm. Fingers too long, narrow, pressed against the inside. You step back, and the light flickers. The motel hums. You can hear the bridge groaning again, but only in your head. You sleep with the lights on. Again, you decide to check out of the motel. Not because you're done, but because the air in that room feels like it's been inhaled and never exhaled. The clerk doesn't ask why you're leaving early. She just hands you your change and says, "Good luck." You book a room at a little B&B closer to the river. The owner, an older woman with gray braids and a strange collection of ceramic owls, offers you tea and a single word of advice: don't whistle after midnight. You don't ask why. That night you fall asleep to the sound of the Ohio River lapping gently nearby, and for a brief hour you feel almost normal again. Then they knock, not loudly. 3 small knocks, like fingertips tapping a doorframe. You don't open it. The knocking returns exactly 1 minute later. 3 taps again. You don't sleep. At sunrise, you open the door. No one's there. But sitting just outside is a black envelope. No name, no address. Inside is a piece of paper with numbers. Long sequences. Coordinates, maybe. You punch them into your phone. They lead to Washington, D.C. You don't know what to make of that. Not yet. You return to the local diner to regroup. The waitress recognizes you. "Still here?" she asks. You nod. "I've seen some things." She leans closer. "Have they come to visit yet?" You ask, "Who?" She just says, "The ones in black." That's when you realize the guy in the corner booth hasn't touched his food, hasn't blinked, and he's been watching you. You get up to leave and he stands too, follows you outside. You walk faster. So does he. You cut through a back alley, heart pounding, and when you turn around, he's gone. You think you're safe until you return to your car and see a card under the wiper blade. Plain, black, pressed in silver letters. "We understand your interest. Please stop." You don't sleep that night because even with the blinds drawn, you feel watched. Here's your dose of historical fact. Between 1966 and 1967, multiple witnesses in Point Pleasant reported visits from strange men in dark suits with pale skin and emotionless expressions. They asked bizarre questions. One allegedly tried to drink Jell-O with a fork. Fringe tidbit. Some say these men in black aren't government agents, but entities pretending to be human badly. Historians still argue whether these reports were hallucinations, government intimidation, or something far more surreal. You lock every window, bolt the door. Then you find your notebook open to a page you don't remember writing. Just 6 words. "He waits on the power lines." You don't recall writing it. But the handwriting is yours, and the ink is still fresh. By now, you've given up pretending this is just research. You're part of the story, or the story has made you part of it. Either way, the line's blurred. You walk down Main Street just after dusk. The streetlights buzz overhead like they're trying too hard. You pass a man muttering into a payphone, one of the few still left in the state. You glance at him. He's crying, or maybe laughing. You can't tell. You're not here for him, though. You're here because people keep telling you about dreams, recurring ones. You find a local historian named Marla who agrees to talk only if you meet her in the church basement. It's cooler down there, humid and full of dusty folding chairs. She doesn't look like the tinfoil hat type. She's organized, calm, measured. She lays out a file folder full of sketches and notes from townspeople over the decades. All dreams, all the same thing. A body falling into the river, she says. A voice repeating numbers, sometimes a date, sometimes a scream of bending metal. You tell her about your own dreams. She doesn't flinch. Sometimes it's not a warning, she says. Sometimes it's an invitation. You ask what that means. She doesn't answer. Instead, she hands you an old newspaper clipping. 1967. A woman claimed she dreamed for 2 weeks straight about a man with wings staring at her from across the river. The day the bridge collapsed, her husband was on it. She hasn't spoken since. You walk home under a sky that feels like it's watching. Every streetlight seems just a little too dim, every shadow a little too still. And then you look up. Perched on the electrical tower above the B&B is something enormous. Wings outstretched, still, silhouetted against the clouds. You blink. It's gone. But the feeling stays. That static in the spine, that wrongness behind your teeth. A grounded historical fact. Multiple bridge workers claim to have headaches, strange dreams, and unexplainable fatigue in the weeks before the Silver Bridge collapse. Some said it felt like being watched by the moon. Fringe detail. Some cryptid believers think Mothman speaks through dreams because it's the only way our brains can understand him, like trying to describe color to someone born blind. Historians still argue whether those dreams were trauma anticipation or messages. That night you dream again. But this time you're not falling. This time you're flying. You see the bridge below you, the cars, the people, the moments ticking down. And in your own dream you scream, but you have no mouth. Morning comes late in Point Pleasant. Or maybe it's just that the light takes longer to break through the thick mist draped across rooftops and telephone wires. You open the window to fresh air, but it smells faintly of ozone, like the moment before a lightning strike. You close it again. At breakfast, the woman who runs the B&B says you had a visitor last night. She found no footprints, no knocked door, just a single feather on the porch, charcoal black, longer than your forearm. You ask if she still has it. She shakes her head. Wasn't there when I came back. I only looked away for a second. You don't touch your eggs. Later, you meet a man named Curtis. He's in his 50s, ex-military, the kind of guy who still wears tucked-in polos and carries a flashlight on his belt. He doesn't believe in ghosts, doesn't believe in aliens, but he believes in being watched. He walks you down by the old munitions bunkers, says he used to patrol this area when he worked security for a chemical plant nearby. One night back in '86, he said he saw a figure hovering, not standing, not flying, just hovering over the tree line. Said it had red eyes but not in the face, more like glowing through it. He didn't report it, because who would believe that? Now you ask him why he agreed to meet you. He looks at the sky like he expects it to answer. Because it's back, he says. You ask what he means. And he replies, "You're not the only one having dreams lately." As he speaks, a crow caws overhead, except it doesn't sound quite like a crow. There's a hollow edge to the sound, as if something tried to mimic it, but forgot how it ends. You look up. The trees are empty. Here's a bit of historical grounding. Sightings of winged humanoid creatures aren't unique to West Virginia. Indigenous legends include the Thunderbird and Omen Bringer seen before great storms. In Mexico, the Lechuza and Owl Woman was said to herald death. Now for your fringe twist, in 2001. Just before 9/11, a few people reported seeing a dark flying man around the Twin Towers. The reports were dismissed, but archived. Historians still argue whether the phenomenon is psychological pattern matching or something reaching across events to warn us in a language older than words. You head back to your room just before dark, and there on your pillow is your notebook. You didn't leave it there. It's open to a page that reads, "Look behind the mirrors." You hesitate, then walk to the bathroom. The mirror above the sink is old, slightly warped. You lift it from the wall. Behind it, a shallow cavity. Inside, a scrap of paper, yellowed, folded, handwriting tight and frantic. They come when he dreams. We just feel the leftovers. You sit on the edge of the tub and realize you're not writing a story anymore. You're inside one. You don't sleep that night. Not because you're afraid, though you are, but because something in your brain has started buzzing, like static behind your eyes. Every time you close them, you feel like you're being pulled through someone else's memories. At some point, you give up and start walking again. Point Pleasant. After midnight isn't silent. It breathes. The wind through the trees sounds almost like words, like an ancient language spoken too fast for comprehension. You end up at the river, not by intention. You blink, and suddenly you're standing near the place where the silver bridge once stood. Your shoes are soaked. You don't remember walking through grass. The water is still, perfectly still. And then across the surface you see it, a shape, just under the reflection of the moon, a silhouette with wings, watching you, not moving. You step back, but the image doesn't ripple. That's when you hear the voice, not out loud, inside. A whisper that moves through your spine like a draft. You're too close. You whirl around. No one's there. But now the night feels different, like it knows you. You head back through the forest near the TNT area. The trees bend toward you slightly, as if leaning in to eavesdrop. You pass one of the old bunkers, and you pause. It's open. You shine your phone light inside, and see the walls are covered in drawings, cave painting style, dozens of crude human figures, all facing a towering winged shape. Its eyes are the only thing colored red ink or paint, still wet to the touch. You pull out your notebook and copy what you can. Your flashlight flickers. You hear footsteps outside. When you rush out, there's no one there, just silence. And then the distant whir of wings. You freeze, not from cold, but because the forest stops. The wind, the birds, everything halts. And, for a brief second, you feel weightless. Like gravity is reconsidering you. You run, not from something chasing you, but from the sense that if you don't, something will decide you've seen too much. You get back to town just before sunrise. Your phone buzzes. A text. No number, no contact. Just 3 words. Stop the story. A historical note. In 1967, one of the original Mothman witnesses, Linda Scarberry, reported ongoing health issues and paranoia for years after her sighting. She claimed she was never alone again. Fringe tidbit. Some say that the creature doesn't just predict tragedy, it amplifies it. That by seeing it, you become a node for disaster. Historians still argue whether that's folklore evolving or a defense mechanism passed down through stories. You sit in your room notebook, open hands shaking, and you ask yourself a question you should have asked days ago. What if the warning isn't for others? What if it's for you? The next morning you decide to leave. You pack in silence, trying not to think, not to feel. Just fold your clothes, zip your bag, avoid mirrors. But when you reach the door of the B&B, your hand stops. You can't touch the knob. You physically can't do it because you hear a knock on the other side. 1, 2, 3, then silence. You wait. Then open the door. No one's there, except at your feet is another feather. Same charcoal black, same unnatural length. And your car keys. You didn't drop them. They were in your jacket pocket. You check the pocket. Still zipped, still sealed. You finally get the engine started and begin driving out of Point Pleasant. The sky looks exactly the same as when you arrived. Low clouds, no sun, like the town forgot how to reflect light. But about 10 miles out, just past a gas station that's been abandoned since the Reagan era, your radio turns on. You didn't touch it. You didn't even know it worked. There's static. Then a voice. Turn around. You don't. The voice returns this time, whispering in Morse code, burst short, long short. Your dashboard clock blinks 3:33 p.m., even though it's 9 in the morning. You glance in the rearview mirror. A figure stands in the road behind you, far off, but growing larger in the mirror. You don't stop. You don't look again. Instead, you drive faster until you hit a dead zone. No signal, no GPS, no civilization. Just trees. And then your car shuts off. Completely. No power. No lights. You sit in the silence, breathing hard, heart hammering. And then you hear it again. Not a voice this time. Wings. Big ones. A soft, deliberate flapping above you. Then, silence. When you finally work up the nerve to get out, there's nothing on the road. But your car has red handprints across the hood. Small. Child-sized. And you don't remember seeing children in Point Pleasant. Here's a historical fact. John Keel, the author of the Mothman prophecies, received hundreds of phone calls during his investigation, many with nothing but electronic squeals or robotic voices repeating strings of numbers. He believed the events in Point Pleasant were part of a much larger phenomenon he called window areas, places where reality wears thin. Fringe detail. In 1975, a man from Ohio claimed he was abducted by a winged being and taken between minutes. He aged 7 years in medical records, but had no memory of missing time. Historians still argue whether Point Pleasant was a one-off or a sample case in a much stranger pattern stretching across centuries and continents. You sit on the side of the road for hours. The car doesn't start. Your phone screen glitches, flashing the date December 15th. You think that's impossible. Today is October. Then it blinks back to normal. You keep walking, because the only thing more terrifying than staying here is going back. You finally reach a diner that looks like it hasn't served a meal since the Cold War. But the neon open sign flickers half-heartedly, so you step inside. A bell chimes. The air smells like burnt toast and wet wool. The waitress looks up and smiles, but only with her mouth. Her eyes are distant, too still. She says table for one like it's not a question, just a role she's rehearsed too many times. You nod and sit by the window. Outside, the sky has darkened to a bruised gray, and in the reflection of the glass, something moves behind you. You turn fast. No one's there. Your coffee arrives. It's black and lukewarm. The waitress sets it down with a note under the cup. You read it. The bridge was never the end. You ask her who wrote this. She just shrugs. You ask if she believes in Mothman. She replies, I believe in warnings. Whether we listen is the problem. You leave cash on the table and exit without touching the coffee. It's colder now. The wind feels heavy. You pass a mural on the side of a building. It wasn't there yesterday. It shows a winged figure, eyes red, perched on a bridge. Beneath the image are names, 46 of them. The victims of the Silver Bridge collapse. But someone added new names at the bottom. Yours is one of them. You run, where you don't know, just away. Eventually, you end up at a payphone by the edge of a park. You don't mean to pick up the receiver, but your hand moves before you can stop it. There's static, then breathing, then a voice, your voice. You shouldn't have come here. The line goes dead. You leave the phone dangling and back away slowly. You catch your reflection in the glass of a nearby bus stop, and it smiles at you. But you didn't smile. You didn't move. The reflection tilts its head. You stand still. It blinks. You don't. That's when it speaks without lips. He's already inside you. A historical fact to steady your nerves. In 1979, the U.S. government conducted a psychological study on mass anxiety events in small communities following disasters. Many mirrored Point Pleasant's post-collapse symptoms: insomnia, hallucinations, community paranoia. Fringe tidbit. In several of those towns, unrelated to Mothman, witnesses still described winged beings, the same red eyes, the same premonitions. Historians still argue whether it's mass trauma or mass revelation. You stumble back to the motel exhausted. You fall into bed fully dressed, shoes still on head spinning. And that night, your dream begins where the last one left off. This time, you're not just flying. You're watching the bridge, the people, the moment before the collapse. And then you see yourself standing below, looking up, scribbling in your notebook, watching you. The moment freezes. You look down at the notebook beside your sleeping body and see what's already written there. This isn't a warning, it's a loop. Then the page flips by itself. One final sentence at the bottom. You were always meant to return. You wake up cold, alone, with static buzzing in your ears. The sun never comes up that day. It just stays twilight, and the birds are silent. Word count 1081. Wind down 300 words. So now as the final page turns and your breath slows, you sit quietly in the dark notebook in hand, the last echoes of Point Pleasant still humming behind your eyes. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe it was an invitation. Or maybe, just maybe, it was a mirror reflecting back something the world refuses to understand. You don't feel fear now, only awareness. You become aware of the hum in the walls, the breath of the room, the gentle tick of your heartbeat, aligning with something older strangers still watching. Your fingertips tingle like they've held too much truth in too short a time. You stretch slowly, like waking from a dream, only to realize you never actually fell asleep. Outside, the wind has calmed. The sky fades into one long breath of gray, soft and unmoving. And though the bridge no longer stands, you feel the weight of it, how it bent under more than just cars, how it held premonitions and panic in its rusted frame. You think about the people who saw it coming and couldn't stop it. Maybe stories are all we have. Maybe stories are the warning signs. You close the notebook now, and the static fades. The mirror stays still. The reflection does not smile. Not yet. But if it ever does, you'll be ready. Thank you for listening to the story.